All right, everybody, welcome back to the Horn Takes podcast. Your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It's Thursday, folks, and we've been off for a while. I think last Tuesday was our last show. Excuse me. Yeah, last Tuesday was our last show. Headed on down to Houston to spend some time with some family members. Then we headed on over to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. So we're back. Today we're going to do the after action review on that said Sugar Bowl. We'll talk about the game. We'll talk about the experience of just being in New Orleans, the experience of being at the Sugar Bowl. And then we'll talk about the officiating a little bit. And just a disclaimer, and I'll go over this again later. If y'all listen to this show, y'all know I just hate officials. I think they're terrible at their jobs. I think they intentionally don't call things that they should call, and I think they make up things that didn't actually happen. I'm not going to tell you why I think that. Like, I don't have like a conspiracy. I don't have like a reason why they do what they do, but I think all those things are true. Certainly. So we'll talk about that. The other thing is we always talk about the officiating every single game, and we're fair and balanced about it. We don't just focus on what happened to Texas during these games. If there's instances that we see where the other team got robbed of a penalty, we always talk about that as well. So just keep that in mind when I talk about officials. And the other thing is, I would say 99.9% of the time, I don't think the officials have a huge hand in the outcome of the game. So that's what we'll do today on the after action review for the Sugar Bowl. You can check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you guys just like to listen to podcasts, which my wife and I love to listen to podcasts, especially when we go on these road trips. And what we usually listen to are these murder mystery, like criminal type, crime type podcasts. Love them. I don't know what else to say other than I just love them. I could sit there and listen to those things for hours if I had hours. So if you're one of those folks that likes to listen to podcasts, you don't like to watch videos, you're not into Twitter, which I'm getting less and less into Twitter. Every single day I look at Twitter. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It is an absolute cesspool. It is terrible. Twitter just sucks. I'm sure it's like this for all kinds of different sort of topics that people discuss on the app, but certainly college football talk is just absolutely ridiculous on Twitter. And there are some rare exceptions where there's some good accounts and some good discussion that happens. Generally speaking, though, it's an absolute dumpster fire. So if you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Tell your friends about it. We talk Texas sports, baby. That's what we do. Before we jump into this after action review, I think it's important to kind of go back and look at what we talked about leading up to this game. Every single game, I always do a Sean's 4 big questions of the game, where I just kind of, as I'm thinking about the upcoming game, I just kind of jot down like 4 things that I think are interesting. And we usually talk about them a little bit on the show. So the 4 big questions I had for the Sugar Bowl as we headed into that game against the Washington Huskies were, 1, are we getting set up for a low-scoring game when everyone expects a high-scoring game? I kind of reached on that one, obviously. Even I didn't believe it. If you go back and listen to the show, I was like, no, I don't think we're setting ourselves up. But I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was interesting that we've seen this in the past where you've had 2 really highly explosive offensive teams meet up in these types of bowl games, and they don't always turn into shootout-type games. Number 2 question I had was, can the Texas defense stop the run and force Washington to be one-dimensional? The last half of the season, Washington has been really good running the football. If you look at their aggregate across the season, across the year, not that great. And they don't put a huge emphasis on running the ball, but it is part of their game plan. I think they do want to in some way, shape, or form during the game establish a little bit of running game. So they're not like an air raid offense. We talked about that. Talked about how they want to run it, and we talked about how it might sound crazy to want to force them away from running, which is something Texas was really good at stopping, and having Penix throw the ball. And ultimately, for me, I came up with it and said, we have to keep them one-dimensional. Penix is definitely good. Penix can really hurt you through the air. But I think if you know that's coming with, 80, 85, 90% certainty every play, it makes it a little bit easier to defend that. So I thought it was really important for Texas to be able to stop the run, make Washington one-dimensional. Question number 3 was, can the Texas running game continue to produce big numbers without Jonathan Brooks? Obviously, Jonathan Brooks was a huge part of Texas's team, obviously on the ground, obviously in the passing game through much of the season, most of the season, goes out against TCU with an injury. And the Texas running back room, which we talked about, was really, really talented even before the season started. They kind of picked up the baton and rolled with it. So the question for us was, going into the Sugar Bowl, could they continue to do that? And then could Quinn stay hot? He had 2 really outstanding games back-to-back. His best game of his career in the Big 12 championship game. A really solid performance the week before that against Texas Tech. He did a really good job against Washington last year in the Alamo Bowl. Had his highest total on the season last year in the Alamo Bowl against Washington. So we thought, it would be super important for Quinn Ewers to stay hot. And our question was, could he do it? So we had that. We talked about those 4 questions. And those really aren't keys to me necessarily. They're just some questions I have. And then we do our 4 keys and a prediction for the Sugar Bowl on Tuesday. Key number 1 was tackle on the perimeter. We had only got a chance to watch Washington a little bit, not even a complete game. I watched some of the Washington State-Washington game on replay. I had seen Washington play against Oregon twice, not in totality, not really sitting down and staring at one screen to kind of see how they did and try to find trends and things like that. But what I knew from that Washington State game was that Penix likes to get the ball off. He likes to get it out in front of people, and you got to make tackles. If you want to slow them down, you got to make tackles. You almost have to lengthen the field for them, and don't let them get these big chunks, especially underneath, because all their wide receivers are really good at the catch and the run after the catch. So we thought that would be a huge key, would be to tackle on the perimeter. Key number 2 was win the money downs on defense. Third down, obviously a huge money down for the defensive teams. We really thought, though, first down was a down that Texas really needed to win, because then you can put them in a situation where they're one-dimensional, and you can, force different trends from there, force tendencies, things like that. So we thought first down was really important. You go back and look at their game against Arizona State. Arizona State did an outstanding job on first down against Washington, and they held them to 15 points. So we knew if Texas was going to be successful stopping or slowing down Washington's offense, that they needed to get to third down. They needed to be able to get off the field on third downs. And so that was a huge key for us. Key number 3, start hot offensively. Generally, we talk about, being the storm for this team. And we just think that, you got to be the team that goes in there and creates the chaos. You've got to be the team that goes in and imposes its will on the other team. So we thought a hot start, and especially offensively, because we knew Washington's got a good offense. We didn't think the Texas defense would be able to slow them down that much. And so we knew they're going to get their points. So for Texas, the key to us was kind of, let's get in there. Let's get a quick start like we did against Oklahoma State. Let's get a quick start like we did against Texas Tech. And then we can kind of go into this hold on mode. Like, everything can kind of change offensively, defensively, if you start hot and get a little bit of a lead. Finally, we said key number 4 was let those running backs eat. They've been doing it all season. It hasn't seemed to matter who's been at the running back position. They've been productive. Kind of like that 2005 Texas Longhorn National Championship team where you saw some guys go down throughout the season and you saw other guys just come in, figure out ways to get yardage. You had Selvin Young start the season, then Jamal Charles really came on. He gets hurt. Ramonce Taylor comes in and they it just did not matter who was playing running back. And I think you've seen that a lot out of this Texas team this year. And then we had a bonus key, win the situations. We've talked about it. There was a stretch during the season, started with the Oklahoma game, where Texas was really bad during these key situations of the game. And for us, those key situations are the last drive of the first half, the first drive of the second half, and the last drive of the game. I even say, the first drive of the game is a key situation. To me, it's a good opportunity for either the offense or the defense to really assert themselves on the other team. In that Oklahoma game, Texas failed all 4 of those miserably. And that's what cost them the game ultimately. But then we saw that pattern for the next few weeks where they just weren't playing good situational football. So we thought that was a key headed into this game. And then we gave our prediction for this game. We started that prediction out by saying that Penix Jr. And the combo of McMillan and Odunze absolutely scare me to death. They gave me nightmares. That is a good group of skill guys. Penix Jr. can throw it. I mean, he's thrown for 4,500 yards, 2 straight seasons. Don't know that that's been done before. If it has, it's been done by very few folks. So he gets the ball out. Those guys are really good catching the ball, and they're really good after the catch. So I was really, impressed by them and really worried about that, especially with that matchup against our secondary as we headed into this game. But all that being said, the Horn Tex podcast score predictor had this one at 35-28 Texas. I said I didn't think it was going to be that big of a win. I had Texas 34-31 in this game. So I was close on the score, just wrong on who won it. So now we get into why. So now we've watched the game. What happened? What didn't work for Texas? What did work for Texas? And I think, first of all, slow start. You go back to the 4 keys, start hot. The offense or the defense just had a slow start in this game. There was a procedure penalty on the very first offensive play of the game, put them behind the chains. There was a defensive offsides the very first defensive play of the game that put Washington ahead of the chains. So right off the bat, either unit just came out and put themselves in a hole. Quinn Ewers struggled early. He was 0 for 4 to start the game. Quinn Ewers was 11 of 19. And I may be off. I went through the stats this morning and kind of came up with some of this stuff. But he was 0 and 4 to start the game. 11 and 19 for 97 yards in the first half. Only 58% completions in the first half. And although the yardage went up a lot in the second half, the completion percentage did not. Offensively, I didn't think they ran the ball enough early in the game. 15 of the first 36 plays were designed passes. A lot of those turned into quarterback scrambles because the pass protection the pass protection was not bad in this game. They only gave up 2 sacks, but there was lots of pressure, and I think a lot of that pressure really affected Quinn Ewers. We talked about the penalties, getting behind the sticks, and so those penalties kind of put us behind, and then the play calling put us behind. Texas was absolutely ripping Washington on the ground, and I don't know why Steve Sarkisian decided that he wanted to throw the ball, but there was something going on in his game plan where throwing the ball was super important. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The penalties we've talked about those multiple times already in this game. Lots of procedure penalties. You just can't do those things. The penalties that happen during the play, a lot of times are just hustle penalties. A lot of times they're a penalty to save, ultimately maybe save a touchdown in the passing game. save your quarterback from getting rocked, offensively. Those things, you don't want them, but you can at least go, okay, that makes sense. Sometimes shit happens, right? Sometimes the other team, the other player just physically makes a better play and you commit a penalty. So those are like ones you can at least deal with. The pregame stuff, which plagued Texas all season long, definitely showed up in this one. And it definitely hurt them. I think you go and look at the third drive offensively for Texas. They had back-to-back holding calls. They had a big play to Worthy where he got up the sideline, almost got a first down on 2nd and long, I believe. That one gets called back because of a Jordan Whittington hold. And then the very next play, they pick up a long 3rd down. Or maybe it was first down, and then I don't know the exact specifics. All I do know is they picked up a long 3rd down, and that one got called back for holding. So they ultimately have to punt there. Basically picked up 2 first downs on long plays that got called back for holding in the single drive. And you're playing a team like Washington. You cannot afford to give up drives. You can't afford to turn the ball over. And I'm not talking about just turning it over where you put it on the carpet or throw it to the wrong guy. I'm saying you have the ball. You need to go get points like as often as you can on these offensive drives. I think offensively they did end up winning the end of the first half, which was awesome. 10-play, 72-yard drive that took up 1 minute and 3 seconds that resulted in a game-tying touchdown there late in the second quarter. I believe it left, 13, 15, 17 seconds left on the clock. Washington just kneels the ball to go into halftime. Offensively, second half was rough. Only 10 points in the second half. They basically took the whole third quarter off. Started off with a fumble on the very first play of the third quarter, which was an 8-yard run by C.J. Baxter that he coughed up. Washington gets on it. Texas only possessed the ball twice in the third quarter, and they only had 34 yards of offense in that third quarter. Absolutely 0 points in that third quarter. So you can't take a whole quarter off. You cannot, absolutely all the momentum they had going into halftime, they just handed back to Washington. You could argue Washington took it. I don't think it necessarily matters. Point being, they didn't do shit offensively in the third quarter. And I think ultimately, that's what kind of did them in. Players that popped, Jaydon Blue, man. I know he had the fumble, and it was poor timing on the fumble. But this guy was 9 for 59 on the ground with 1 touchdown. And something we haven't seen a lot of for Jaydon Blue, just an absolute very physical run down on the goal line where he wasn't going to get in the end zone. He puts his head down and runs right over the top of a Washington defender to get in the end zone. So we saw a different side of Jaydon Blue in the running game. We always knew he could take the ball and be shifty, get down the field in a hurry. What we didn't know is he's also can be physical, and he looked really good in this game in the running game. He had 4 catches for 45 yards, including a really, really nice over-the-shoulder catch late in the game that got Texas even further into Washington territory. And at that point, really started to make it a reality that Texas had an opportunity to win this game. Adonai Mitchell, for me, pretty quiet game overall. He only had 4 catches for 32 yards, but he did have a big touchdown late in the game. He's been in 5 playoff games, folks. He's got a touchdown in each one of those playoff games. I wouldn't swear that there's not a guy that's scored a touchdown in every single playoff game he's been in, but I bet you there's not many of them. And so he's just that type of guy that shows up in big moments for his team. Jordan Whittington, 4 for 70, including a really awesome 41-yard catch on 3rd and 10 on that last Texas drive that kind of, if Jaydon Blue's catch really made it a reality, that Jordan Whittington catch was kind of the precursor to that, where you thought, you started thinking to yourself, oh my God, like they have a chance to go do this. Because they got the ball back with 45 seconds left, no timeouts. The first couple of plays were incomplete passes where it just looked like it was going to be one of those moments, kind of like the Alabama game 2 years ago, where Texas technically had a chance, but they just weren't going to make any plays to actually bring that chance to reality. And so that huge catch by Jordan Whittington, and by the way, really nice throw by Quinn Ewers as well. Wasn't all Jordan Whittington. It was a great ball, great play on the ball by Jordan Whittington. That really sparked, sort of the belief in the stadium. I felt like Quinn Ewers ends up going 24 of 43, 56% passing, which is about, it's close to 20% off of his season average and what he's been able to do. He did throw for 318 yards and a touchdown, but it certainly was not Quinn Ewers' best performance. We talked about it earlier. He just struggled really bad early on. He was just completely off. He missed, he missed some throws, and these aren't. I don't think these were just overly, tough throws. Something was not right with the timing. He missed Xavier Worthy in the end zone later in the game. So not Quinn's best effort. And I think if you asked him, he would say that. Texas was 4 of 11 on third down, just not good. And most of those, it would have been a miracle if they picked up, because a lot of those were third and really long. They were 5 of 6 in the red zone, which is something that Texas struggled with early in the season. It was red zone offense, but they did pretty well in this game. The lone failure, that final drive, they weren't able to punch it in. Defensively, I think it really started with a sort of an inconsistent pass rush. I think during the game, as I was watching the game, I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, we are not getting any pressure on this guy at all. And after rewatching the replay, that really isn't the case. They got 20 pressures according to the FPI, the ESPN's or Football Pro, whatever the hell it is. I don't even know. It's just some grading service that grades out players, grades out units, things like that. So they did get 20 pressures, which I think was the most any team has gotten against Washington all season long. But they had 0 sacks. And I think it was a little inconsistent. I think the biggest problem, and they got hurt a couple of times, was this. They came on blitzes, and the blitzes just did not get home. And with that, you got guys on an island, and Penix delivered footballs, and wide receivers for Washington made catches. One thing I noticed, and I've noticed it all season, Texas is blitzing linebackers and blitzing defensive backs are just simply not aggressive enough at the point of attack. If they're going on a blitz and they see that there's a blocker in their way, like if they're not getting a free shot on the quarterback, they tend to stop their movement into the backfield and they try to dance around the offensive player. And what they really need to do is put their helmet right in his chest and push him back into the quarterback as much as they can. Get as much stuff going on around that quarterback as they can. And they just didn't do it. When they did get pressure, it was not enough bodies. Like it was a one guy that was getting some pressure. So Penix did an outstanding job in this game of being able to sidestep those things, get set back up, look downfield, find a guy, and deliver the football. Just some really, really amazing, accurate plays by Penix. If you saw my TikTok video directly after the game, or you saw, it's the same video I put up on Twitter as well. Got a lot of love on Twitter, a lot of interaction on Twitter. Man, all I had to say about Penix was he just puts it out there and it's a dime every time. And that is exactly what it was. Just unreal accuracy in the passing game by Penix Jr. So the pressure was just kind of inconsistent, and the blitz packages did not get home at all. They were not able to get their hands on Penix. I don't know if they got a hand on him, maybe one the entire game, because again, they just weren't putting enough people in the backfield in front of him. So kudos to that offensive line. We talked about one of the matchups heading into this game was the Texas defensive line against the Washington offensive line. And I really thought that I knew Texas was going to win the running game. There's just nobody's been able to do that to them all season. And that turned out to be true. But I thought the Texas defensive line would be able to, put some legitimate and meaningful pressure on Penix Jr., and they just could not do it. As we said, they stopped the run. They only gave up 102 yards on 3.3 yards per carry, and that was with Penix Jr. averaging 10.3 on 3 carries. So Penix Jr. went for almost 31 yards, or did go for 31 yards, which eclipses his season total by like 40 yards. I mean, he was like minus 13 on the season headed into this game. And kudos to the Washington offensive staff, because I think they said, we're going to do this. We're going to do it. We're going to be selective about it. It's not going to be the game plan, but Texas is susceptible to the quarterback run, and they were. And so, he didn't hurt Texas. He didn't have any long runs, huge long runs, but he was able to pick up some yardage in some key situations, I think, that helped them continue to hold on to the ball and get down the field. Their running back, Dillon, who's been averaged 136 yards a game, I think, over the course of the last 5 games of the season. He only gained 49 yards on 21 carries. So they did a really good job bottling him up. They stopped him on 4th down at least once. So I thought the run game, the defensive run game was really, really good. And so I'm going to say this, and some folks are probably going to roll their eyes. The pass coverage was actually not that bad in this game. Most of the game, there were a couple of times where, for instance, on the very first drive of the game, they get behind Texas just enough. I mean, it wasn't terrible coverage. He didn't get beat like a redheaded stepchild. He was right there behind him, but too far away to make a play on a really accurate football. And that's what Penix delivered, was a really accurate football. Surprise, surprise. And then later in the game, there was an instance where they were able to split the safeties down on the goal line for a really nice touchdown pass. Again, an accurate throw. I mean, they weren't that far off. It was like a split second that they didn't do what they should have done. And that opened the window, and Penix threw the ball right through the window. So, but other than that, really good. Ryan Watts gave up a couple of really long plays in this game. He was standing right next to the guy. I mean, you couldn't have been in any better position than he was at as far as coverage goes. And that's really what it was kind of like most of the night. I think the big key there was not enough pressure to affect Penix. Penix was able to stand back there relatively, unbothered, and really focus down the field and allowed to get that ball down the field accurately. And we've talked about it multiple times since the game. He just played out of his mind. And I don't even know that it's him playing out of his mind. I think he just generally plays out of his mind. That guy, to me, is the best quarterback in college football. He certainly should have won the Heisman Trophy. The guy, he's just amazing. We were sitting there, and when he would rear back to throw the ball down the field, and I would see where it's going, I'm like, we're going to make a play on that. And he just threw it so accurately. And let's give some credit to that receiving group too. They're really good at like waiting until the last second to go get the ball. They're really good at, they're really good at these contested catches. You saw that on a touchdown. Malik Muhammad dives under the pass, gets a hand on it, a finger on it. That causes it to hit the wide receiver's hands and go straight up in the air. And he just plays tip drill with himself. So at that point in the game, I kind of turned to my wife and I said, man, it is just not our night. When shit like that happens, it's just not your night. And I kind of had a feeling that it just wasn't going to be our night. Pretty much from that point forward, Texas did end up getting back in that game multiple times and really making it a game at the end. But yeah, I did not feel like the pass coverage was bad in this game. So kudos to that, again, that Washington skill group. They did a really good job making contested catches, and Penix Jr. did about as good as you could possibly do throwing the ball. I mean, I don't think you could throw the ball much more perfect in a game than that dude did. The defense, we talk about these situations. They did not win the first drive of the second half. They gave up an 8-play, 70-yard drive for a touchdown right there to start the second half, which, kind of shitted all over the momentum they had got by being able to get down the field towards the end of the second half. Ideally, you'd want to win both sides of that. And if you can win both sides of that, you put yourself in a really good spot. Suppose they don't score that touchdown at the start of the third quarter. What's that make the score? You can tell, especially in a close game, winning the end of the first half, winning the beginning of the second half, very, very important. This defense was outstanding on third down. They just didn't force enough of them. They held Washington to 3 for 11 on third down. So they did a really good job when they got to third down. We just did not force enough third downs. The red zone defense was not good. That's one of the things that they have been good at all season long, and they just weren't. They were sick. Washington was 6 for 7 in the red zone. So they got in the red zone a lot, and then they were able to convert in the red zone. You look at it defensively, kind of a mixed bag. They weren't able to make plays when they were in really tight coverage, which was one of the things we said leading up to this game. We want them to play that tight coverage. They need to be able to play that tight coverage and force Penix to be perfect. And I think they did that for the most part. They did it enough. They just could not win those one-on-one battles with the receivers. They just could not make a play. I mean, you look at these slow-mo catches, and their hands are like an inch away. Like they're a tick behind getting in there and getting that ball out. And ultimately, and it was consistent. It wasn't like it was onesies and twosies, and they won some, they lost some. No, they lost them all. And so they did what they needed to do to be in position. They just couldn't make any plays once they were in position, which is honestly an improvement, for this Texas secondary. We've seen this Texas secondary for a long time. And this is going back years. Just not be in the right position. We saw this Texas secondary earlier this year get beat on some big plays because they weren't anywhere close. They just didn't do what they were supposed to do. So kudos to those guys. They gave up 430. I think that was what Penix's final line was, 430 something yards passing. But really, all they can do is credit that guy because they were in good position. Final thoughts for this game. I thought there were 3 key moments in this game that really, had they gone the other way, you might have had a Texas win. And I think not all 3 of them had to happen. I think any one of these things changes. And I think Texas has an opportunity to win the football game, probably does win the football game. To me, the first one was 4th and 1 on Washington's final drive of the first half. Texas finally getting some momentum. They're getting some stops. They're able to move the ball offensively a little better. Quinn is starting to complete some passes. The running game just absolutely mauling through Washington. And then Washington, Texas forces this 4th and 1. And it's not even close to midfield. I think it was I feel like it was around the 30-yard line. And maybe it was a little further out. I don't know. Definitely on our end of the field. Their end of the field. And so first Washington comes in, tries to draw them offside. So at that point, I'm thinking they're punting, which was good. That's what we needed. We needed the ball back. But Washington comes out and decides to roll the dice. And I don't know how much Washington rolls the dice generally. They did not do it a lot in this game, and I haven't seen them do it a lot. So I think they went for 4th down twice. One of them was way down deep in Texas territory. The other, obviously this one. So they roll the dice and they pick it up and they get a big 5-yard run. I think it was Dillon's second longest run of the game. And so they pick that up. They go on to score, make it 21-14. So to me, that was a huge one. You win that battle or you force that punt. You get the ball back. Maybe you go score. And then who knows what happens. Maybe you score again with a minute left and you're just cruising at that point. But ultimately, they didn't make that 4th down stop. I think the second pivotal moment was the fumble on the first play of the third quarter. They're down 28-21. The defense just gave up a really long drive for a touchdown to open up that second quarter. Really needed that Texas offense to at least possess the ball for a while. And they just didn't. They fumbled it on the very first play. And again, an 8-yard run, a really nice starting play on first down, and they cough it up. Washington recovers. The defense ends up only forcing a field goal, so they held Washington to just a field goal attempt, but they went down by 10. And then from that point on in the third quarter, Texas only touched the ball the next drive. And so you look at it, you want to possess the ball, you want to be able to score points. You just can't give away possessions like that. And I'm not saying Texas would have gone and scored, but who knows what could happen if they just possess that ball for a little bit, keep Penix and that offense off the field. And then I think the third one, and this one was a really tough one, the first drive of the fourth quarter, the third quarter did not go Texas's way at all. They're in a big hole. They get down to the Washington 24 on a long pass play. Jaden Blue coughs it up. If they didn't gain another yard, it would have been a 41-yard field goal. I like Bert Auburn at a 41-yard field goal all day. I mean, I'd put $50,000 on Bert Auburn to kick a 41-yard field goal every single time, and I'd make a shit ton of money. So if they didn't gain another yard, the score's going to be 34-24 at that point. Would have ultimately been able to tie the game with a field goal at the end of that game versus having to score a touchdown. And that's huge. They could have forced overtime. Just if that play doesn't leave Jaden Blue's hands and go into the Washington players' hands. So those three moments to me, and I'm sure, you can always point to moments during a game and say, if this happened or this didn't happen. But those were like big, to me, like key points in this game where Texas did not execute, where they could have easily executed. And if you look at those three things combined, it doesn't take all three of them for the outcome of this game to be different. It really just takes one of those things for the outcome of this game to be different. I thought offensively, Sark really missed out on an opportunity to control the first half in the running game. I know they were playing behind the sticks a little bit. A lot of that, though, was, incomplete passes. And a lot of that was we didn't protect the passer because we just kept throwing the ball and throwing the ball and throwing the ball. And this is all while, keep in mind, this is all while Texas is just ripping off 5, 6, 7, 8-yard runs. I mean, there was, to me, and I'm old school, man. I played in an offense in high school where we ran the ball 99% of the time. And it didn't matter if it was 3rd and 40, like we're probably running the football. And so that's just my mentality, especially if you are just continuously and consistently picking up chunks of yardage. You don't let a defense off the hook until they stop you. You don't stop doing it until they stop you. And I've been critical of Sark about this before in the past. And I think a lot in this game, he reverted back to, sort of this last year and the year before Sark, where he just, for whatever reason, in his mind, the game plan had to be, we've got to throw the football. And I get it. They've got weapons. I'm not saying don't throw the football. I'm just saying, man, 6.6 yards per carry this Texas offense had. 180 yards. And that was with him completely and totally letting them off the hook, the Washington defense, in the first half. I think Texas could have lined it up every single play in that first half and just ran the ball directly the fuck down Washington's throat. And who knows what the outcome of that is? Who knows what that does? I mean, I think Texas could have scored 35 points in the first half, literally just running the football. That's how good the offensive line was performing. That's how good the running backs were performing. They just didn't do it. Think you combine that with the penalties and the slow Ewer start, and that's why we had to scrape and scratch just to tie the game there at the end of the second quarter. The quick passing game, which is something that we've seen a lot of, really all season, they just didn't do it in this game. Everything was drop back, try to get the ball down the field. Very few quick little passes in this game to the wide receivers. They did get the ball out to the running backs quite a bit, and maybe that's by design. Maybe that's just Washington does X, so we're going to do Y instead of trying to force something that's probably just not going to be successful. So I'm not being critical about that. I'm just saying they just didn't do it. And then I heard this, and I never heard this before. I heard the announcer say that Sark scripts 40 plays. 40 plays. The first 40 plays he calls outside of like weird situations are off of a 40-play script. And I just think that is absurd. And that's probably why we didn't run the ball. We didn't even get 40 plays. And if you go through and look, it's pretty balanced. But why be balanced when you're dominating one area and you're really, really struggling in another area? You don't win anything there, in my opinion. And I know I'm just a fat guy sitting on a chair talking about football, but that's my opinion from watching the game live, being at the game. I just kept wondering myself, especially in that first half, why are we even passing right now? Defensively, again, wasn't as bad as it seemed through the air. I thought they did some things we talked about in the 4 keys. Tackling on the perimeter, I thought they did a really good job there. I thought the downfield coverage was really, really pretty good. They just didn't finish. They just couldn't win those individual matchups. And Penix was just absolute money, man. That guy, I don't know if that's the best he's ever played in his life. But that was just an amazing performance. And you can't, there'll be some Texas fans that can't be gracious enough to just admit that, and I'm not one of them. Again, go check out that Twitter reaction I put right after the game as we're walking out of the stadium. It's up on my TikTok as well. There's nothing to take away from that Washington team. You can't do it. They just played a hell of a game, and especially him. You look at this game, we always talk about turnovers. We talk about sacks. We talk about tackles for loss. Texas lost all 3 phases of that in this game. 2 turnovers to 1, 2 sacks to none, 5 tackles for loss for Washington, only 2 for Texas. So in a lot of areas that this Texas defense normally wins, this Texas team normally wins, they just didn't do it in this game. All that said, the team never quit. There was one point where it was 34 to 21. And we were just like, this is done. We weren't leaving. We weren't going to give up either, and nobody did, by the way. I didn't see any Texas fans rolling out when it looked like this one's over, folks. They don't have a chance is what it looked like. But the team really, really responded. And I think, there's been a lot of talk this season about the culture that Steve Sarkisian has been able to build and just how this team just plays hard and they play for each other. And that, what happened in that game doesn't happen if you don't have those things. And so kudos to the staff, kudos to the players. They could have easily just laid down and just accepted that they, the probability wasn't good. And instead, what they did is they just kept playing their asses off, and they damn near came back and won that game. So from a fan perspective, I'm super proud about that. I'm super happy with the direction of this program. Would it have been better to win that game and learn that lesson at the same time? Absolutely. But it is what it is. I really think that third quarter just ultimately was the difference in the game. I thought the final series of plays once they got the ball inside the red zone was just kind of disappointing. And I'm not even talking about like the play calling because what a lot of people say is all the play calling. What they don't get, very rarely does a coach go, hey, we're going to throw it to A.D. Mitchell on a fade. That's the play. I don't care about anybody else. That's all we're doing. That's not what happens. What happens is what coaches do is they draw up a series of routes. And based on the coverage and based on the quarterback's reads, that's where the ball goes. So this whole idea that, Steve Sarkisian, why did he throw a pass play to the running back on the first play? He didn't. That's where Quinn Ewers decided to dump the ball because there wasn't anything open down the field. So Washington had a good coverage on for that specific set of routes that Steve Sarkisian called. So let's get that out of the way, first of all. He didn't call a dump off to fucking Jaden Blue. But what I did feel like is at that point in the game, you got to really force the ball into the end zone. And for Quinn, who's probably just trying not to make a mistake, and I totally get that, at some point you just have to gamble. And you got to force the ball into your guys and make it a catchable ball. That fade to A.D. Mitchell on I believe it was the second play, it just wasn't close. He didn't have a chance. He did not have a chance to go make a play. And that's your guy. I'm not sure if it's me. I don't figure out a way to get him isolated on one side of the field, everybody else on the other side of the field, and just throw that 4 times if I'm Texas. And just force it in there. And if it gets picked off, well, shit, man. Washington made another good play. They deserve it. But when you're afraid to get the ball anywhere close, you're not going to ever make a play. And so I felt like they just didn't push the ball into the end zone enough. They just didn't give themselves a chance. They're it's like the old Darrell K. Royal thing. There's 2 things that can happen or 3 things that can happen on a pass play, and 2 of them are bad. They used to ask Darrell Royal why he didn't throw the ball more. They kind of adopted that mentality where, oh God, we don't want to turn it over. Well, that's great. I mean, if it's the first quarter, yeah, you don't want to turn the ball over in the end zone. When you're down by 6 and there's 20 seconds left, it's probably okay to turn the ball over in the end zone. Because the alternative is you don't get the ball in the end zone anyway. The last play was just so strange to me. It looked like Adonai Mitchell, just started jogging off the line of scrimmage. He somehow gets open and open pretty well. And Ewers just kind of throws this really lazy, not on a rope, not showing off that arm that I know he's got type of throw. And by the time it got to Mitchell, the cornerback was able to recover and made a good play. It's almost like they weren't on the same page to me. I don't know what the deal was there. I'd love to hear what the deal was there. Sugar Bowl, great time. We went to the World War II Museum. I highly suggest going and checking that out. The Sugar Bowl parade was pretty good. It was kind of long, but I think if there's one thing New Orleans can do, for sure, it's the parade. It was a good time. The food down in New Orleans is outstanding. If you like Cajun food, Creole food, and there's food everywhere. Bourbon Street, a little too much for me on New Year's Eve once it really got popping, but we did spend some time on Bourbon Street. Went to some of the bars there, had a good time. There's places to drink and eat everywhere. New Orleans is a really good I never felt unsafe. I heard a lot of people say, oh, watch this, watch that. The only thing that was kind of, and I don't care. I'm not a fuddy-duddy, but there was a lot of people smoking weed down there. So the smell of that was just kind of hanging in the air. And that's not my most favorite smell, just to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I never felt unsafe. We had a good time. So I wish we could have stayed longer because we would have ate more good food, would have had more good times. I think the Superdome is a great place to watch a game. It's old, antiquated, but it's pretty quaint. For being such a big building, it only holds 68,000. We sat in section 626, I believe, and we had good views of the whole field. Like, I did not feel like I missed anything whatsoever at all. If you're sitting on the sidelines, man, there's nothing you're going to miss in that place. So we had a really good time there. The fans, I think the Washington fans were absolutely outnumbered, probably 3-1 by Texas fans, 2-1 by Texas fans. But they showed up and they were loud. That place was rocking when Washington was on defense. I only had one UW fan say anything stupid to me the entire time. So kudos to those folks. Really not a lot of interaction with them, but when there was, it was cordial. I think the Texas fans showed up huge in this game. Lots of noise, lots of Texas everywhere in New Orleans leading up to the game. The only jackassery I'm aware of was this guy that was trying to fight Washington players at the end of the game. I don't know what that was all about. Just as a general rule, you shouldn't try to fight players. It just kind of makes you look like a dumbass. So, yeah, just don't do that, Texas fans. I know it's disappointing, and it can sometimes be hard to be gracious in defeat, but I think you can do it. You just have to step back and go, man, it's just a game, and that's all it is. So anyway, I thought the fans for both schools were showed up in force. It was a good time. Great time. The Sugar Bowl was great. I'd never been to one before. We had a blast. We'll definitely do again. Now let's talk about officials. And disclaimer, I am not in any way trying to blame this loss on officials whatsoever. I always just like to do a good job of pointing out how shitty officials are. The block below the waist thing on Ryan Watts was the most absurd fucking call I've ever seen in my life. He was trying to make a tackle, first of all. He didn't hit the line and below the waist, second of all. It's a stupid-ass rule in the first place. Like, why can't a defender chop the legs out from under a blocker to keep leverage? So basically, we're just saying they got to stand there and get fucking steamrolled or lose leverage on the play. And there's nothing you can do physically to change that at all, except stand there and again, just get smashed. I thought, it had no bearing on the, the outcome of the game. I just thought it was fucking stupid. It's a dumb fucking rule. Fix it. They missed an obvious offsides on UW with 6:34 left in the first half. The result of the play was a 2-yard loss for Texas. Made it a 3rd and 12 instead of a 2nd and 7, which it should have been. Actually, 2nd and 5, which it should have been. And then Texas ultimately has to punt. I think that one could have affected the outcome of the game. In a close game, one play like that could cause, a different thing to happen. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm not saying the refs cost Texas the game, because they didn't. We're not going to say that here. But I thought the the officiating was just bad. Do your fucking job. And then they picked up a flag on a block in the back. And I don't remember all, I don't know if this one would have, could have, should have, maybe changed the outcome. It was absolutely a block in the back. I have no idea how they picked up the flag. And it was after the whistle. So it could have been a block in the back. It could have been a unnecessary roughness, personal foul type penalty. And they just picked it up and just completely ignored it. And to me, that's just like egregious. Just, you suck. So the officiating, not good. I'm sure there might have been some UW things that they have to gripe about. I don't remember seeing them in the replay. I don't remember seeing them live. So there you go. Referees and officials in college football still fucking suck. Quick draft news. Worthy declares for the draft. No surprise there. Alfred Collins is coming back. He's our guy. We want this guy to succeed. We want him to be the new T'Vondre Sweat and the new Byron Murphy, and physically he's certainly capable of doing that. I think he made a jump this year. He kind of made a jump from just being there to finally starting to make some plays. So we'll see what he can do next year on the 40 acres. Join us tomorrow for the Trace Ultra Games recap. Those will be the bowls that matter. Let's see how we finish the year out. We'll have our national championship prediction tomorrow. Next week, we'll move to one show a week, and we'll kind of just start wrapping up this 2023 season. And I'll probably take maybe a little different direction in this podcast. We'll kind of have like some, I don't even know how to describe it. I'll think about that more. We'll talk about that tomorrow, maybe, certainly next week. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Follow and subscribe. We appreciate the support. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good Friday Eve and get hooked.